A serving MP is stabbed to death in his constituency, sparking shock and devastation across the political sphere. Sir David Amess was killed by a man who stormed into a church in Essex where the MP was meeting locals, but despite attempts to save him, he died earlier this afternoon.
He loved people, loved doing his job. I'm sorry.
A true gent, hugely kind and a great friend. Politicians from all sides have been reflecting on his life, shocked by the manner of his death.
David was a man who believed passionately in this country and in its future. And we've lost today a fine public servant.
It's once again called into question the safety of our MPs and whether more could and should be done. Also on the programme tonight. COVID testing at a lab in Wolverhampton is suspended after more than 40,000 people are given the wrong results. And the Queen's irritation at world leaders who talk the talk but don't walk the walk on climate change.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. There is shock and disbelief tonight at the death of Conservative MP Sir David Amess, who was attacked and stabbed this afternoon. The 69-year-old father of five was holding a surgery at a church in his Essex constituency at the time, and he died at the scene. A 25-year-old man has been arrested and is tonight being questioned on suspicion of murder. Police say they're not looking for anyone else. The Prime Minister led the tributes to Sir David, describing him as one of the kindest, nicest and most gentle people in politics. He'd been an MP for almost 40 years and was respected on all sides of the House of Commons. This is the church in Leigh-on-Sea tonight, where Sir David lost his life earlier today. We'll be live from there in just a moment and look at the urgent questions this raises about MPs' safety again. But first, Paul Davis with the latest on today's terrible events.
Armed police on the doorstep of a Methodist church hall where an MP turned up to listen to his constituents' problems this lunchtime. That hall is now a murder scene, and Southend is mourning the loss of Sir David Amess, who was stabbed to death doing that most basic of an MP's duties.
The response of the emergency services to this incident was immediate, and our officers arrived on scene within minutes. When they arrived, they found Sir David Amess MP, who had suffered multiple injuries. This was a difficult incident, but our officers and paramedics from the East of England Ambulance Service worked extremely hard to save Sir David. Tragically, he died at the scene. A 25-year-old man was arrested immediately at the scene on suspicion of murder. He remains in custody.
Dozens of paramedics had rushed to help the 69-year-old politician following reports that he'd been repeatedly attacked by a man armed with a knife. There was an outpouring of sadness and respect as constituents learnt that the man who'd represented them had been beyond help.
Today we lost a great man. Last 50 years I've been resident in England. I never met any people like him. He was so nice and kind to everyone.
Coverage on the BBC
He was
News
a
channel
good friend,
right now, but now on
good
BBC
MP.
One, we
He
join
was
the
very
BBC
well,
News teams where you are.
I'd say
Goodbye.
respected and go
It's
on
just
even
gone
further to say
6:30.
loved around here. Everybody knows his name.
Meeting constituents face to face at venues like the Methodist Hall had only just resumed. It exposed MPs to risks, but Sir David Amess considered it a vital part of his role. He was one of our longest-serving MPs, for almost 4 decades, representing Basildon and then Southend for the Conservative Party, a man known for his support of animal welfare and pro-life issues.
David was a man who believed passionately in this country and in its future. And we've lost today a fine public servant and a much-loved friend and colleague, and our thoughts are very much today with his wife, his children and his family.
Across the parties, across Parliament, he was so respected and so liked, and there's a very profound sense of loss, I think, across politics, across faith and up and down the country.
Flags in the Essex constituency have been lowered to respect a man so horrifically taken from his wife, 4 daughters and son. As an air ambulance sent in the hope that a swift journey to specialist care could save the MP's life was sadly recalled, a close friend of Sir David, who was supposed to be meeting him this evening, talked of what had been lost today.
It didn't matter what your party was. If you went to him with a problem, he would help you. It didn't matter what culture you were, he would help you. And that's how he was.
As police continue to question a 25-year-old man arrested at the scene, a community is remembering a politician who always made himself available to them, and today paid a terrible price for that. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Well, our correspondent Sejal Karia is outside Southend Police Station, and our UK editor Paul Brand is at the scene. Sejal, I'm just going to start with you first, because in the past few minutes, police have said that the investigation is being led by counter-terrorism officers.
Yes, Charlene, we have just heard from the Chief Constable of Essex Police, B.J. Harrington, who has held a news conference, and he has said that this investigation is being led, as you say, by counter-terrorism officers. He said that the motive, they are keeping an open
programmes
mind
to bring you some
as to what the motive was, and that these were the early stages of an investigation led by counter-terrorism officers, but he was keen to stress that there was no threat to members of the public at all. We have also know now that there is a 25-year-old man in custody who is being questioned. He was arrested at the scene earlier today and arrested on suspicion of murder, and that they are not looking for anyone else in connection with this incident.
Sejal, thanks very much. OK, let's talk to you now, Paul, because this happened inside a church during Sir David's constituency surgery, and people just must be so shocked there.
Yeah, and Charlene, when Sir David arrived here this morning for his regular surgery, there would have been none of this police presence, no barrier between him and those that he represented, and quite deliberately so. MPs don't want to be cut off from their constituents. They don't want to be separated by security. Sir David would have known when he advertised these appointments as recently as Tuesday that there was some risk in doing that publicly, but he was one of those who argued most vociferously against increasing security to the degree that MPs would be cut off from those they represent. And those I've spoken to here tonight say he was a man of this community. He's been repeatedly described to me as a gentleman. One woman I spoke to this evening who was particularly close to him said that she isn't just saddened but sickened by his death. There is anger here tonight that their representative was taken from them in their church hall a few yards from their high street. No MP can please everybody, but nobody here tonight doubts Sir David's commitment to this constituency, a commitment which has ultimately cost him his life.
Paul, thanks very much. We've been joined now by our global security editor, Rohit Kachur. And Rohit, we heard earlier that counter-terrorism officers have now taken this over. So what do we know about the suspect's background and a possible motive?
Well, what we've been told by one source, Charlene, is that this man was a foreign national. And most significant from that police news conference that Sejal was just reporting on is that announcement that this investigation will be led by Counter-terrorism Command. Perhaps that's not surprising. Here is an elected representative who has been killed, the second in 5 years. That may well be an issue of resources, unleashing the necessary investigative resources, rather than an indication that police have actually worked out what the motive was, because my understanding is that is not the case as yet. They're still looking through the suspect's phones, through his computers as well. And even though Counter-terrorism Command are leading this investigation, it may well be that the motive suggests something else, that this may never actually be declared an act of terrorism.
OK, Rohit, thanks very much. Well, the stabbing follows the murder of Joe Cox back in 2016, which Rohit just alluded to, which highlighted just how vulnerable MPs can be. And the Speaker of the House of Commons has said that security will have to be re-examined. But whilst meeting with constituents does pose risks, it's also vital for MPs to hear directly from the people they represent. Our political correspondent Libby Vina looks at the safety concerns.
Like most MPs, Sir David Amess was a man who relished being out and about. Meeting constituents face to face was all part of the job, but in the end cost him his life. Roger Gale was a close friend who also entered Parliament in 1983.
It happens, it goes with the job. You just have to take the risk, but that doesn't make it any better when you lose a friend like David Amess and when you know what this is going to mean and what it's going to do to his family.
Do you think that MPs need to look again at their own safety in the light of this?
We all have to be careful, but you can't wrap us in cotton wool.
But after the murder of Joe Cox on the eve of the EU referendum, MPs were offered extra security, including panic buttons. 6 years before that, another MP, Stephen Timms, was stabbed twice in an attack by an Islamic extremist. Today, Kim Leadbeater, now an MP in her late sister Jo's constituency, said safety was always on her mind.
Totally shocked by what's happened, to think that something so horrific could happen again to another MP, to another family, and scared and frightened and, yeah, a real rollercoaster of emotions, to be honest.
In a recent book, Sir David reflected on how Joe Cox's death had changed things. "We're advised to never see people alone," he wrote. "We must be extra careful when opening post, and we must ensure that our officers are properly safe and secure." In short, these increasing attacks have rather spoilt the great British tradition of the people openly meeting their elected politicians. A former MP who was close to Sir David says the police need to take threats to MPs much more seriously.
It was horrific. Towards the end of my tenure as an MP, the amount of abuse we were receiving, death threats became a really common occurrence. We would sit in the tea room at Parliament and talk about, death threats we'd received at the weekend, like it was almost just sort of normal conversations.
Security around Parliament was stepped up after PC Keith Palmer was fatally stabbed while on duty. It's likely the safety of MPs in their constituencies will now be looked at again too. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Let's talk now to our Deputy Political Editor, Anushka Asthana, who's over at Westminster tonight. Anushka, we've seen some beautiful tributes from Sir David's colleagues, but also worries about MP safety.
Yeah, let me just start with a couple more tributes. One MP said to me he was love, joy and hope personified. Another, Sir Graham Brady, who chairs a backbench committee of Conservative MPs, described Sir David's beaming smile always coming towards him. He said that smile was infectious. He said Sir David loved Westminster and loved politics. We're going to hear more tributes here in Parliament on Monday. There is a real sense of shock, but also a feeling that something bad was going to happen again, because while we don't know the motives in this case, as you've just been hearing from Paula Sheriff, there has been a sea change in the way that MPs are treated. And I have seen that. When I got here over a decade ago, no MPs talked to me about death threats, but now they do. One said to me today, there is an epidemic. He said that a number of colleagues had people who had been charged or were in jail for threats. A female MP said to me that they'd had 700 threats since 2010. I said to one MP, does it make you want to not do this? And they said, no, I want to do it, but it makes my family very scared. And that has been echoed tonight, although people saying Sir David would not want this to leave MPs less willing to see constituents freely.
Anushka, thanks very much for that. Well, we'll have more from Leon C later on in the programme, but also coming up, the 43,000 inaccurate COVID tests, why many were wrongly told they didn't have the virus. Plus, the Queen's irritation at world leaders ahead of a crucial climate summit. We'll have all of that after the break. Welcome back. COVID tests at a privately run lab have been suspended after it emerged at least 43,000 patients may have wrongly been given a negative result. NHS Test and Trace says it affected PCR tests over a 5-week period from early September, which were taken by people who mostly live in the southwest of England. Juliet Bremner reports.
11-year-old Ashton took a total of 10 rapid lateral flow tests. All of them were positive. Yet 3 PCR tests came back negative. His mother, who runs a care company in Bristol, has lost trust in the testing system.
Obviously, we were really vulnerable people who, if they got COVID, they would be extremely sick. So it's worrying knowing now that there's potentially 43,000 people that have passed it on, and obviously those numbers are just going to double.
Thousands of false negatives have been traced to this laboratory in Wolverhampton. Testing at Amess Health has been suspended while it's investigated. Of the 400,000 tests processed by Amess Health in the last 2 months, an estimated 43,000 gave a false negative between the 8th of September and the 12th of October, resulting in much lower case rates. In West Berkshire, one of the areas affected, the number of positive cases dropped off significantly in the first fortnight of September. There are concerns about those tested at Newbury Showground. Test and Trace are attempting to contact several thousand who were tested here in the last 10 days and may still be infectious. The recommendation is that they should be retested. There's frustration that it's taken so long to work out that something was going wrong. Both here at the main Newbury testing centre and at other places across the southwest, people say they've been complaining that their PCR tests didn't match their lateral flow results for more than a month now. Health bosses have launched a serious incident investigation, but insist they acted as quickly as possible.
It wasn't that we had no positive tests coming through. That would have been a very easy thing to spot. We have some positivity. So it is, as I say, this location of the geography combined with the time periods that's allowed us to understand this now.
Amess Health say they're cooperating fully with the investigation and that quality is paramount. But trust placed in public testing is likely to have been badly shaken. Juliet Bremner, ITV News, Newbury.
The Queen's views on climate change have been revealed after being picked up on a microphone. Just weeks after the crucial COP26 summit in Glasgow, she expressed her irritation at leaders who talk but don't do. And she said it's extraordinary that she still doesn't know which world leaders will turn up. Our royal editor, Chris Shipp, on why the Queen is not amused.
She was in a public foyer of a public building and she knew cameras and reporters were close by. Whether or not the Queen intended her words at the Welsh Parliament yesterday to be heard is not clear. Buckingham Palace won't say. But we do now know what the Queen thinks of world leaders who have not yet committed to next month's climate change summit COP26. Extraordinary, isn't it, she said. I've been hearing all about COP. Still don't know who's coming. No idea. She went on, we only know about people who are not coming. It's really irritating when they talk, but they don't do. The Conference of Parties, or COP26, the Queen spoke about is the UN Climate Change Summit in Glasgow at the end of this month. The British government is hosting the world and the Queen will attend along with other senior royals. Its most ambitious goal is to cut carbon in order to limit global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees Celsius. President Biden is coming, but other key world leaders have yet to confirm their attendance, including President Putin of Russia and President Xi of China. And until this morning, Australia's Prime Minister, whose country exports huge amounts of coal, had been lukewarm about his attendance. Whether it was a coincidence or a desire not to further irritate the Queen, Scott Morrison has now confirmed he's coming.
Overnight, I confirmed my attendance at the Glasgow summit, which I'm looking forward to attending.
Environmentalists say the Queen's words might be a little awkward, but ultimately they will help.
What's good about the royal family saying it is, of course, that they're international figures as well as UK figures.
Just like at the G7 summit in Cornwall in the summer, ministers will use the royal family where they think they can help on the world stage. We wait to see who will turn up in Glasgow. Now they know the Queen is paying close attention to the final guest list. Chris Ship, ITV News.
A prominent huntsman has been found guilty of telling hunts how to hunt illegally following an ITV News investigation. The activity of Mark Hankinson, the director of the Masters of Foxhounds Association, was exposed after hunt saboteurs leaked footage from hunting group webinars. He's been fined £3,500. And fully vaccinated UK travellers will be able to visit the US from November the 8th, the White House has confirmed. This will end the blanket COVID ban on foreign travellers from entering the country. And we return to our main story tonight, the stabbing of Conservative MP Sir David Amess. The 69-year-old father of 5 died after being attacked inside a church as he held a constituency surgery in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. A man has been arrested and counter-terror police are now leading the investigation. The Prime Minister paid tribute, calling Sir David one of the kindest, nicest people. Our UK editor Paul Brand is at the scene for us tonight. Paul, it's been a terrible day and many will be in shock tonight.
Absolutely, Charlene. And you know, it's just over 5 years since we were reporting from outside another surgery in another constituency on the killing of another MP. And I think one of the central questions tonight is what has actually changed since the murder of Jo Cox? Yes, the security of MPs has been increased to some degree. Some carry panic alarms, some have panic buttons in their offices, but ultimately the risks of their job remain the same. And one MP said to me tonight, it has to be that way. She said we have to be amongst the people, and by have to I mean we want to. So there are calls tonight to review the security of MPs, but I think others are anxious that the killing of Sir David does not also strike at the heart of our democracy.
Indeed, Paul, thanks very much for that. But that's all from us for tonight. Julie will be live in Essex with the latest developments in News at 10. But from all of us here on the Evening News team, bye-bye.